So welcome to my new office. It's a little bare right now. We're still working through getting things done in here, but it's a comfortable place to be in, and I like doing my readings here. So, and I can actually like have my everything set up, and you can hear me properly and all of that. So, here we are. We're gonna talk about this crazy ass energy that we're in right now. We're going to talk about the equinox. We have a lot to talk about today. And I thought maybe I should break this up into a couple of videos because I don't want you guys to sit here for hours and hours and hours, but and it's not going to be for hours. We're not going to talk for hours, but it all kind of goes together. So I thought, hey, why not? Let's just start talking about it and get into it. I hope you guys are doing okay. That Pisces moon shift and everything that came with it was really loud, probably pretty dark for a lot of people. I know that, including myself, there were several people that I spoke with that had a difficult time in more so the second half of Virgo season. You know, honestly, like, I'm going to be real with you guys. I had this physical exhaustion, which happens with this cancer that I'm fighting every single day. It's so funny. Everybody looks at me and they're like, you don't look like you have cancer. And that's perfectly fine for you to think, but that's where you have to understand that you never truly know what a person is going through, because everybody looks different. Everybody's going to be different through their processes, through their illnesses that they go through. And this is such a rare one. Like, I would explain it to you guys again, and maybe someday we will sit down and talk about it. But it's such a rare one that it's like one of those invisible diseases that happens. There's not a whole lot that can be done for me right now. But yeah, there's some exciting things that are happening with the treatment plan that it's all sort of up in the air right now, but I'm just living every single day in the best way that I can. So I had this terrible physical exhaustion for a while. It was probably a good month and a half, and I can take a lot. But this energy on top of it with Mercury going retrograde and that Pisces full moon that was just full of revelations, necessary revelations. And it's not even really revelations of anybody else but yourself, you know? Like, I know that a lot of people want to blame their circumstances of where they are on the outside world. And if you are depending on the outside world to create happiness for you, you will blame the outside world because, that what else do we have? If we're not taking accountability for ourselves, we're always going to be pushing that, we're going to be, using the outside world and all of the circumstances that quote unquote happen to us. One of the biggest things that I've really realized just in the last year, not just in the last couple of months, but just in the last year, is that things don't happen to you. Things happen through you. And the more we live in a victim mentality, or the more we allow ourselves to think that bad things are happening to us all the time, the harder it is to pull yourself out of that, really. Like, it's just very difficult to pull yourself out of that kind of idea, that kind of mindset. So I had this physical exhaustion for a while, and I can take a lot. I can, I am a person that has spent many of hundreds of thousands of hours, millions of hours, even with myself. I don't know how many hours, but and in the darkest places that I could, mentally, physically, there's not a lot that I can't handle. But when you have a physical exhaustion after being like such a vibrant person for your entire life, and normally with this, I'm like physically exhausted for like a couple of days, and then I can like bounce back and everything feels better again. But this time around, it just wouldn't leave, and it wouldn't leave, and it wouldn't leave. And there was one point where I just became so depressed in the last couple of weeks after that full moon in Pisces. The week leading up to it and even the week after, that I couldn't tell whether I was depressed because I had physical exhaustion or if the depression was creating the physical exhaustion. Do you see what I'm saying? Like everything was sort of molding together and melting together. And I'm really happy to say that the last couple of days, and I feel like a lot of this has to do with my own like sheer determination to like not be a potato on the couch for the rest of my life. I have started to get back some of that physical energy again and that vitality. It's slow going. It's very, very slow. I closed off the rest of my calendar for September just to kind of take a few breaths for myself. But so very interesting things are happening with the energy. And so if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling down, we're moving into that part where the nights become longer. And we have this equinox coming up on the 22nd. And I wanted to talk a little bit, give a little bit of background about what we're talking about when we talk about the equinox, because a lot of people don't necessarily understand the polarization and the magnets that we have on this earth. So I did some research because I am not a scientist. I did some research for myself so that I could understand it a little bit better. And so we have this geomagnetic field around the Earth, and it protects the Earth from the from the cosmic weather, basically. It shields us from particles from the sun. It shields us from the solar wind. And when we lose that electromagnetic shield around us, that's what happened with Mars. And now Mars is more of like a bubbly, fiery planet. Things, it's a, hotter, right? It's a hotter planet. So we also have these two sets of poles. So we have this geomagnetic, just think of the Earth and think of that shield around the Earth. And then we have these two poles. We have two sets of poles. We have a geographic pole where we have the North Pole and the South Pole. The North Pole is in the Arctic. And then we have the magnetic poles. So those two sets of poles. The magnetic pole is the one when you're using the compass and the compass turns due north, or the arrow goes due north, it's shifting towards the magnetic pole. And currently the magnetic North Pole is in Ellesmere Island in northern Canada. That's where it's located. And it shifts, it moves about 25 miles every year. So, when it was discovered in the 1800s, it was many, many miles away, but it was still in northern Canada, but many miles away from that. So, when we have the equinox, it's an equal day and night, right? So throughout the year, we're losing daylight or we're gaining daylight. And in the spring, when we have the equinox in March during Aries season, we begin to see more daylight throughout the summer months and the spring months and the summer months. And then as we move, and this is for the northern hemisphere, of course, the southern hemisphere would be the opposite. So in March with the Aries equinox, we call it the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere, but it would be more considered the fall equinox. So in the southern hemisphere, you guys are going through the spring equinox with this. But in the northern hemisphere, this is where we begin to see the days shorten, the light of the days shorten, and the darkness of the night gets longer. And the darkest night that we have happens in December during Capricorn season. And it's like the longest night of the year, right? Okay, so here we are at the equinox. And the way that the Earth's energy, and I don't know if anybody like pays attention to the Schumann resonance and all of that stuff. Well, the core of the Earth also guides the magnets. It's all connected, right? Where, that's the pole goes directly through the center of the Earth and all of that. And the center of the Earth has been heating up for many years. And the more we have these solar flares and the more we have the Earth's core heating up, and a lot of times that happens because the vibration and the frequency of the Earth is also rising. It's growing. Doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing. But a lot of people think that's what the global warming is and all of that stuff. Totally, completely different topic. We're not going to get into that today. So our bodies have to get reacquainted, if you will. And as these magnets shift around us with the equinox and we get to this polarized, this equal level, I call it a biannual tune-up. Like, you know how you have to get your car tuned up on a regular basis, otherwise it's going to be sputtering and it's not going to turn over correctly when you turn it on. I call this like our biannual energy tune-up. And oftentimes it can feel right before we have that level up, right before we have that like shift and we're going over that shift, it can feel extremely pressurized and it can feel like we're just sort of all losing our minds. And we can oftentimes feel like we have no hope, right? And as we move into the darkest days of the year, which happens every single year, I want to remind you guys to make sure that you are taking care of your physical bodies, because one of the biggest things that I've learned through, especially with that physical exhaustion that I had, is that if your physical isn't working properly, your mental isn't going to be working properly. This is that 12th house and 6th house that we all have in our charts. So figure out what your 12th house and your 6th house. The 12th house is the unknown. It's the mental. It's the things that people don't see, right? And then the 6th house is going to be our physical bodies and the way that we take care of our own physical bodies. If you have prominent placements in your 6th house, please take care of your physical form. Even if you don't have placements in your 6th house, find out what that sign is for your 6th house and what are the best ways for that sign to physically take care of yourself. I wish somebody would have said that to me many, many years ago, because I probably would have been paying a little bit more attention. But along with the 12th house, if your mental capacity isn't doing well, then your physical is going to be compromised. If your mental capacity, if you're not doing well, if you're too stressed out, if there's too many things going on, up and down and in and out and all of these things happening, and you're not paying attention to your own physical form, things can happen in the future or down the road that you're not going to be prepared for. Trust me when I say that. And then you'll have to be like, oh my gosh, is it too late for me to finally pay attention to my body? And the way that it's unfortunate, because most of us adults these days, and really we learn this as children too from our own parents, if we are not learning how to take care of ourselves physically and mentally, it'll come at great costs to ourselves as we get older. So I would like for you guys to really, really pay attention to that during this equinox time, and allow your body to tune up a little bit. A lot of people I know are, beginning new workout routines, beginning new ways of setting intentions for yourself on a daily basis. One of the things that I'm working on is this, we're doing a masterclass at the end of October, the weekend of October. We don't have all the details for it yet, but I did put it up on the community page for you to kind of get an idea of what it's going to be. My particular masterclass that I'll be teaching is designing peace for your life, because everybody's life is going to look different, and designing that the peace for your life is also going to look different. So we're going to work through ways in doing that. And one of those ways is being very, very intentional with your physical and mental health. And so that's something that I'll be talking about heavily, like in the next month, with the next couple of readings that I do as well. But with this equinox, I've recognized, everybody's been feeling a little fuzzy lately. Their minds have been a little messy. Mercury retrograde has definitely not been helpful with that. Mercury will go direct on October 2nd. But before that, on the day of the equinox, the 22nd, we will have a Mercury retrograde cazimi, which means Mercury and the sun will be joining each other in the sky. We'll also have Venus the same day as the equinox, which is Thursday this week, the September 22nd, Thursday this week. Venus will be a degree away from opposing Neptune, which will be exact on the 23rd, so the day after the equinox happens. But we just had the sun opposite Neptune on Friday and over the weekend, and it was more of an enlightening experience. I think a lot of people who didn't pay attention necessarily to the shifts that needed to happen and the changes that needed to happen may not be feeling so great after that sun opposing Neptune, because Neptune takes away from whatever planet it's aspecting. But with Venus and Neptune, it kind of doesn't matter. I mean, yes, it matters what aspect is going on, but with Venus and Neptune, there can be such a delusion, right? There can be such a delusion of worthiness. There can be such a delusion of love. There can be a delusion of relationships. And because Venus is in her fall right now in Virgo, that doesn't mean that a Virgo Venus is a bad person. I'm a Virgo Venus. It just means that we are of service instead of instead of listening just with our hearts, we listen with we love with our minds. Excuse me. Instead of just loving with our hearts, we love with our minds. So, there is a lot about relationships. So the equinox happens. The sun, as it hits Libra at 0 degrees, will join Mercury on the 22nd. It's going to be later on in the evening, but we're going to feel it really all day because they'll be right there with each other at the 29th degree of Virgo as well, moving right into. And so you can allow the magic of opening up your heart space with this equinox and recognizing the relationships that you have with yourself will mirror the relationship that you have with other people. And I know that kind of concept is a little weird for a lot of people to grasp, but honestly, the more you allow yourself to have relationships with yourself, you see people, the more you allow yourself to love yourself, you see people through more loving eyes. The more you allow yourself to not be angry, to process the pain, to get into those deep, dark moments and allow yourself to be real about it, the easier it is to be able to get away, the easier it is for you to be able to clearly see the relationships for you and the relationships that are not for you, for better or worse, right? Like, and that's the thing, is even if relationships aren't for you anymore, it doesn't have to be this big dramatic mess of things. It's funny if we could just all admit to ourselves that alignment, we either align with each other or we don't align with each other. And that doesn't mean that one person is any worse than another person. Of course, depending on, the way that the other person acts or the way that you act or whatever. But the only reason why we become toxic to each other is because we allow it. We allow for, instead of saying, this doesn't work anymore, somebody goes to cheat. Or instead of saying this doesn't work anymore, somebody just starts to ignore the other person. Or, and we see that so often that because we just can't admit that it's time for us, that's that codependence of everything. We just can't admit that it's time to, remove ourselves. And the month of Libra season is really, Libra represents the seventh house, the natural seventh house of the zodiac. And so relationships are always very, very important during Libra season. There's no coincidence that we have Libra season right after the equinox, going through our biannual tune-up and, resurrecting the relationship with ourselves so that we might have better relationships with other people. There's no coincidence that happens. But this particular one is going to be very interesting because Libra season begins with a Mercury Cazimi and Libra season ends with a Venus Cazimi. And Venus will be in her home sign of Libra on October 2nd with that Cazimi moving into Scorpio season. So it's almost as if this revelation is going to be happening for us once we hit Scorpio season and once we get there on how well we've done with the relationships in our lives, including the ones that we have with ourselves. On another note, now moving into the new moon in Libra, I told you guys we have a lot to talk about today. That new moon in Libra will be happening on the 25th of September at 3:53 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. So Mountain Time, 3:53 p.m., which means it'll be about 5:54 p.m. Eastern Time, and it'll be 2:53 p.m. Pacific Time. So right in the middle of the afternoon, kind of early evening for all of us. And the new moon in Libra is going to be opposite Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius by a degree. The sun will be opposite Jupiter the day after the new moon. And we will also have Saturn in Aquarius, trine Mars in Gemini at a degree. And Saturn, of course, is square Uranus at this degree. Funny, and it's really interesting because Saturn will be direct on October 22nd as well. Right as we're moving into Scorpio season, Saturn starts going forward again and moving direct and or stations direct. And so that in itself is showing us sort of this culmination of energy a month after the equinox happens. So there's really like this portal, I'm just going to call it that, this portal that we're going through from now until Scorpio season is really going to be quite, it's a big moment for all of us because, the way that everything is shifting, we've talked about how March 2023 is really going to be showing us a whole brand new energy generationally and all over the board. And this is preparing us for this. All of these things are preparing us for this because do we really want to go into a new era in the same kind of tone that we've been moving through up until now? This new moon in Libra, new moons are really good for manifesting. I know a lot of people don't really like that word right now. There's a lot that everybody gets irritated by these days. And I know that New Age spirituality is bringing up some discord when it comes to some of the words that, we've been using for a very long time, actually. But to create with a new moon, this one is going to be really big with relationships. You could meet new people during this time, whether it's romantic. Any new person that you meet during this time is probably going to be very important for the direction of your journey and the direction of your path that you're on right now. You could be resurrecting relationships during this time. Remember that Mercury is still going to be retrograde, so any new relationships or any resurrections of relationships need to be fully discerned. And remember that the relationships that you are seeking will be mirroring the way that you have relationships with yourself, the way that you actually feel about yourself. For a very long time in my life, I never really felt worthy enough for particular relationships in my life, and I would always sabotage them. Always. Sometimes it wasn't me sabotaging them. Sometimes it was the other person, but the fact that I would choose a person that would sabotage our relationship was me sabotaging it. When we take accountability for that, for the choices that we make, the people that we choose to be around, the people that are influencing our lives the most in that moment, when we take accountability for that, it's much easier to see how the blaming of other people can often be fruitless. Like, I mean, what are we really blaming other people for? Because we didn't listen to our own instincts, or we didn't pay attention to the red flags. Wow, so many red flags I've seen. So, with Saturn square Uranus, we've been going through that for the last year and a half, and it's freaking exhausting, and it's really just creating massive change in the collective and the way that we see things and the way that we're doing things. And it's just going to continue to happen. When Saturn goes direct, they'll finally be about 2 degrees away from each other about that time, when Saturn goes direct on October 22nd. And we might begin to feel a little bit of reprieve from that massive change of work that we've been doing. It's like the changing of the guards almost is what it feels like. So the cards that we're going to do today, we're going to look at the energy of what this equinox is going to be bringing us, and what this new moon in Libra is also going to be bringing us, because it will, I want to see what this next month, basically, like the next month that we're going through, we'll do another reading with the full moon in Aries during Libra season. But I really want to see what this next month is going to bring for us as we get through. Wow, okay. I can already feel like the tension in here. There's a lot of masculine energy that's being cleared out right now. A lot of aggressive masculine energy. A lot of know-it-all masculine energy. Where we have, there's another card in here that flipped over and there it is. Where we have previously had our hearts broken, or where we've previously not been caring for our own hearts. Wow, there are 3 kings in this reading. There's not a queen in sight. That's the problem. Not a queen in sight. The first card that came out was the 3 of Swords. And then we have the King of Swords. And then we have the Hierophant. There's a lot of cards that came out. And then we have the King of Cups. And then we have the 9 of Swords. We have the Fool. We have the King of Pentacles. Very masculine energy. Page of Swords. Strength. And then the 3 of Cups. The fact that we had the 3 of Swords come out the first time, the first card, there's this reconciliation that I feel like is happening, and I feel like it's happening with our masculine energy. And we've really been working with the masculine energy a lot lately in the last couple of months, and it's because there needs to be a heal. The masculine, the toxic masculine energy that we have in this world right now. It's not everywhere, but there's a lot of it, and it's the patriarch, right? And so many people are really angry with the patriarch, and so many people have been through the deepest, darkest parts of, that masculine energy. And so I think that we're all sort of trying to redefine who we are outside of colonialism, who we are outside of feeling like we're sort of forced into this. I've been doing a lot of ancestral healing. I've been doing a lot of healing my own DNA based on the generational traumas that my grandparents passed down to me. And in doing that, I'm recognizing how much we truly blame outside sources for the pain that we're carrying on the inside. And in a lot of ways, that's accurate to blame the outside source. I mean, like, if we're all having to live in poverty and we're all having to live day to day in fear because the media tells us to, or because the president tells us that, one thing and the reality is something different, or whatever. If anybody is telling us that the world looks a certain way and we're believing it outside of the reality of what's happening right now, like if you have a roof over your head and you have food in your belly and you have loved ones around you, you're doing pretty damn good at this time. But because of that lack, that fear, and that lack that we're all really programmed into, I mean, imagine, like, I think about this all the time. My two older children were born during 9/11. My oldest son was born the year of 9/11. He was three months old when that happened. And whether you believe that that's a hoax or whether you believe it actually happened, people died that day. And ever since then, we have been living in this fear. There's been this fear programming over and over and over again. Not to say that there wasn't fear in my generation, the generation before my children, right? Like, of course there was fear during that time as well. It was just a different kind. But when children are raised in that, there's this programming that we go through, right? So we're all sort of, I like to remind myself every single day that we're all sort of just doing the best that we fucking can every single day. And to deny ourselves of healing the things that we did not ask for. We didn't ask to be programmed with that kind of fear. We didn't ask to be placed in the kind of families that we were placed in. We didn't ask to be born. I know some people say that, actually use those words. I didn't ask to be born. Why do I have to go through all this shit? I didn't even ask for it. Even if we don't deserve what we've been given, which most of us don't deserve what we've been given, in order to not put that on to other people in the relationships that we have to heal our own traumas and our own wounds and our own selves outside of the fear and lack programming. So a lot of that, and this is part of that designing peace for your life. A lot of that is not paying attention to what, you can believe that there's a shortage of food and there's a lack of food, or you can believe that you can grow food and there are plenty of places on this earth to be able to do that. You can believe the things that people are saying, that the media is paid to say, or you can allow yourselves to soften up a little bit. Come back to yourself. Feel more secure within yourself. We're healing the patriarchy part inside of us. We're healing that masculine energy within us. And I feel like with the King of Cups, there's a softening that we can allow ourselves to do because with this Hierophant card, this is very much societal standards. This is very much of following the rules. What are the rules? Are you making the rules of your life, or are you following the rules of other people's? Thoughts? Okay, so then we move on. 9 of Swords. on the Fool. Yes, my friends, it is frightening to begin new things. It's very, very scary. And for some of us, it's not about being afraid to start new things, but like, when is it going to happen? When is that shift going to happen? When am I going to be able to see the glory of that new day? And I promise you that it's coming, but leaving yourself in this Nine of Swords kind of state while waiting for it to happen can be a really big drag. That's where that depression comes in, right? And a lot of times, just before that really big break that we have, we're in that it's that pressure moment that, you know, and a lot of times we beat ourselves up for things like that. Then we have the Page of Swords with the King of Pentacles. Watch how you are speaking to people. Be sure that when you are using your words for this next month, be sure that you are grounded in your own personal truth in the way that you're feeling. If you're a person that has to use your masculine energy, if you're like for example, I, as a woman, and a very feminine woman at that, had to use a lot of my masculine energy through most of my life because I was on my own a lot. And so I had to make all the logical decisions. I had to be the one that I had to lead myself. I had to teach myself and lead myself. And that's what the masculine energy is there for. It's to help. It's to lead the feminine energy logically, while the feminine energy is the intuition and the parts of the magic and stuff. So, when we are not grounded within our own masculine energy, that's when we're very open to be pushed down by the fear and the lack programming, because we feel like we're not doing good enough. We feel like we need to do more. We feel like we need to push. Meanwhile, our feminine energy on the other side is like, no, this is, we especially right now, we're under a Cancer moon right now. So listening to that feeling inside of you, that nurturing feeling inside of you, and saying, you don't have to hustle through this next phase. Allow yourself to make decisions, allow yourself to have conversations rooted and grounded within your energy, instead of feeling like everything is just falling apart. Before you have any conversations with anybody this month, I really want you to ground yourself within your own energy first, because we can say a lot of things that we regret when we're not grounded in our energy. If we have to have conversations or we have to complete tasks, if we're not grounded in our energy, it's very, very difficult. There's a strength that we are being provided with, and with that strength, there's also going to be celebrations and coming together with other people. Now, the Three of Cups for me is not about third-party situations. When it comes to, unless there's like negative aspects with the card, but when it comes to our own strength, community, the Three of Cups reminds me so much of community. It is I didn't even check to see if my microphone was on before I started talking. It is, as we all can see now, but community is really what's going to save us. And again, if we can't have relationships with ourselves or know ourselves in the deepest ways, that it's very difficult for us to have relationships and have community, because we won't trust anyone. If you can't trust yourself, who can you trust? I didn't trust myself for a really long time. And that's a process. We have to allow ourselves to do that. I'm very curious. I'm going to clarify the Three of Swords, the King of Swords, and the Hierophant first. Okay. So there's a death, an ending. When I say death to things, I don't actually mean the real kind of death. Now, is it possible that that's the thing? Sure. The Ten of Swords coming out of the Three of Swords the Ten of Swords clarifying the Three of Swords, the King of Swords, and the Hierophant. That Ten of Swords is telling you that the pain and the suffering and the heartache and all of those things are coming to an end. The heaviness of it all, right? Death, I'm not scared of the word death because I know that we die daily. There is a transition that we have every single day, and it's not something that, it's just a natural process. We transition out of ourselves and into our new selves all the time on a daily basis. So, natural process of flow. So that Ten of Swords, the endings are necessary in order to start that healing process, that Three of Swords healing process. And the end of, the funny part is we can't control the end of the media. We can't control the end of the control. We can't control the end of the fear programming and the lack programming. We can't control any of those things, but what we can control is the way that we see all of those things. And recognizing that they don't, you can let them pertain to your life in all the ways, that you want to believe that you're being victimized by the world. I use that word not lightly. I don't use the word victimized lightly. Because there are victims out there. There are truly, truly, truly victims of circumstances out there. And then there are people that just want to be miserable and they don't want to think of other possible ways of living outside of the way the world told you to live, right? So very much healing our masculine energy through that. Let's clarify the Nine of Swords with the Fool. We're just going to go right down the board. Okay. Bottom of the deck, Knight of Cups. I love that energy. Love that. Okay. The Nine of Swords and the Fool, we have the Seven of Pentacles, clarifying the Nine of Swords and the Fool. Patience, man. Oh my gosh. I know a lot of people don't want to be patient right now. I know I used a different card set. Did you notice that? I just noticed that. I used a totally different deck to clarify these cards down here, which I think that's kind of hilarious that I did that. But that Seven of Pentacles is very loud. Like, as you know, we plant our seeds and then we drive ourselves crazy on when it's going to happen and how it's going to happen and, if it's going to happen and who it's going to happen with and all of those things, right? Yeah. So the patience, you've already done the work. And faith is another thing that I'm really, really learning to have in a lot of ways, because the more that we have faith in the universe is going to show up for us, the easier it's going to be for us to create, the easier it's going to be for us to have those new beginnings. But if you get impatient about what it is that you're trying to create, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get through all of that. So then we have the Two of Cups with the Page of Swords. The Two of Cups is clarifying the Page of Swords and the King of Pentacles. This is exactly what I was talking about with relationships. Have those conversations when you're grounded. There are people that you are going to meet during this time. And even after Mercury goes direct, there are going to be people that you meet during Libra season. And, the way that you are presenting yourself needs to be authentic. You don't have anything to prove to anyone. And you could meet some very intricate people, like very important people for your path during this time and forge these new relationships. But if you're afraid that you're going to get hurt, if you're afraid that these relationships are just going to hurt you even more, then it's never going to happen. You're always going to sabotage yourself. If you're afraid of future relationships because of the past relationships, that's stopping yourself, right? And Page of Cups on the Strength card and the Three of Cups. So as much as we want to be in community, we have to remember that we find the strength within ourselves first, and then we find the strength of the community in the outside world. And again, it's about worthiness. It's about feeling that worthiness. And a lot of people are in that place where they're not feeling that worthiness of self right now. So, you know, I love that we had this card reading. I love that I did this today because it's very much showing us how we are learning how to open back up to being with people after being shut down for years, after being in this pandemic for years, and after being isolated for years, and after being told one thing after another, of things that just really weren't that true. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's just not full of truth that's being said right now. So discerning in your own heart space and in your own energy what is true for you, because the truth is hilarious. Truth is hilarious because everybody has a different truth. Everybody has a different perspective. Everybody's coming from a different place. Everybody. We're not always going to see eye to eye on things. So that's why you have to get to know yourself outside of what the world is trying to program you with, incorporate you with. You know? Okay. All right, my guys. I appreciate you all for hanging out with me for the last 48 minutes. And I hope you're all doing well. And if you're not, please reach out. Reach out to me. Reach out to somebody that you trust. You don't have to be alone. I know that with myself, sometimes I have to isolate and reconcile within myself. But there always comes a point in time where I need to be honest about, you know, getting my own feelings out so that I don't just drown in them. So the closer we get to this new moon in Libra, I do think that the energy is going to lighten up a little bit. The equinox is still going to be a little bit fuzzy. But trust yourself. Trust your instincts and allow yourself to discern the actions, motives, and words of other people. The more you trust yourself, the easier it is to do that. I love you guys. Have a wonderful equinox and a wonderful week, and I will see you all very, very soon. Bye.